Good morning. It is Thursday. Happy Explicit Measures Podcast to everyone. I guess that's weird. Good morning.
Way to make
Holiday
it awkward
day.
right out of the way.
It's a
Here we go.
holiday.
It's a holiday.
Everyone take off work.
Take
It's
off
an
work.
EMP day.
It's EMP holiday day today. Oh my gosh. Good morning, Tommy. Good morning, Seth. How are you guys
Good
doing?
morning. Not bad.
I'm doing pretty good.
Awesome. So for those who are watching live on YouTube, we have pre-recorded these videos, so these are pre-recorded, so there will not be a chat window for those of you following along there. For those of you who are listening on the podcast, you don't care. You just can just listen along, and you can just kind of hang out and enjoy the conversation. And with that,
So,
we'll get
careful
into it.
Careful note on that. The pre-recording is just this session and Tuesdays, right?
Yes.
We are typically live at
We-
7:30.
Correct. We will be live
Yes.
after
Yeah.
this week. Michael is out on vacation, so therefore he doesn't have his massive gaming rig that he can use to record audio. And we figured we
I
won't-
call it a cop out.
we're not
We're
going
just bring along another suitcase.
to exactly.
After the Explicit Measures holiday's over, Mike will be back.
Yeah,
So,
exactly. So we'll do these earlier so we can get a better recording of video and or audio quality as well.
Guys, I want to
Yes.
let you know, I
Go ahead.
mentioned this on the last podcast, but I'm going to go right now into the Field of Dreams game. Do you know what Guy Fieri did to promote the Field of Dreams? He
No
said,
clue.
what's more American than apple pie and a hot dog? Right?
Power BI.
He basically said, yeah. Microsoft's going to say global, but for sure. But, so what he did, and he gave away for free at the game, was a apple pie hot dog, which was literally a hot dog in the middle of it.
What?
Do you guys want to know what that
Doesn't
tasted
sound very
like?
good.
Yuck.
Imagine an apple pie with a hot dog in it, and that's exactly what it tasted like. There was no surprise.
No
it wasn't like,
combination
oh,
of
the
flavors
taste
that
mixed.
makes you just
No,
go,
you-
wow.
It's like you ate an apple pie, but why is there a hot dog in this? That's exactly what you thought.
Oh
You
my
didn't go,
goodness.
yeah. It's just
That's
like,
weird.
who put a hot dog in my apple pie? So I wanted to mention that at the, but yeah, Guy Fieri's crazy. I don't know where those thoughts come from, but
Marketing to the nth
not a
degree.
good
right there.
idea.
Yeah, exactly.
Right.
So in real topics of things to talk about, we're gonna transition into I think a pretty good topic here that I think will be relevant to all of us. So I think this is something we all participate in. We subscribe to this. It's, do you have to join a user group to advance your Power BI career, or do you have, if you're going to be a Power BI professional, do you need to be a part of a group? And so kind of where do you guys stand on this? So let's kick it over to Seth. What do you think? What is your perspective on Power BI user groups and advancing your Power BI career?
Well, I am the person with blunt answers all the time, right? So I'll
Get to it
bluntly
straight.
answer and then follow up right away. The
Right.
answer to your question, Mike, is no.
Oh,
Should you? Yes.
yes. Yeah, you don't have to do it, but I think all of us participate heavily in user groups, and we've had a conversation last week around culture. What is the data culture at your company? And Tommy made this great analogy around, his family was talking about the Italian culture and like
Yeah.
showing up at a city and figuring out like, what does that culture look like, and how do you know when there's culture that's there? And Tommy threw out a couple bullet points that I thought were really relevant. There's a place to meet. You have people that make you feel part of together. There's a togetherness aspect of this. You're talking kind of the same language, like you're using like Italian and you're talking together in language that everyone's familiar with. That kind of brings people together, and like you have this like similarity with that group of people. And so I feel like in the same way, we don't really have a place to meet yet because of the pandemic. We've kind of been doing it online for now, but in the same vein, we have this data culture. We talk this language of data. We talk this language of Power BI. We have a regular meeting time. Like our user groups meet at the end of every month. We have a single day that we do it on. We can get together and talk. And frankly, at the end of our user group, we do an hour-long session, and then we do like hang out and talk. And we've talked
Yeah,
late.
yep.
Like we've been out till we've got, so meeting starts at 6. We've gone till 7, and I think we've been up till like 10 o'clock, just arguing
Yeah,
and talking
easily.
and
Easily.
yeah, and just having fun, just continually discussing around Power BI. And there may have been alcohol involved, so that may be why what got a little bit
Hey,
spirited in discussion.
I mean, what are you gonna do?
Yeah, what are you gonna do?
It's community, man.
Yeah.
I mean, and that's the user group is a microcosm of the larger organized events, and when you engage in that local
Yeah.
or now online, right? And I think I love what we've done, which is just make it, I think it makes it easier.
Oh,
Is
totally.
we're online, we do a presentation, and then come talk to us. Like
Yeah.
it's not this huge, it's the same thing that
Right.
happens at conferences when
Yep.
a speaker is up on a stage, you go look at them, and then like you talk to them afterwards. Like it's just a
Yep.
chill conversation. A lot of time people are like, I have this problem. And you're like, whew,
That's a big problem.
let me
Can't
try
solve
and
that one.
that for you. But the conversations aren't like that. It's
Give me 15 seconds. Also,
Well,
getting to know people.
I love it when people come into so I've been at a couple conferences. I love it when people come to you with a computer and they're like, at the end,
Yeah.
they catch you on the way out and they're like, "Hey, Mike, I got a problem with this thing. Do you mind if I show you?" And I'm like, "I'll take a look at it. Maybe it's something simple I can figure out." And they bring up
Yeah.
this like convoluted data model.
Of
There's
course it's
measures
not
all over the
simple.
place,
The
and I'm like,
Yeah.
I don't have a freaking clue how to solve your problem. But like,
if it was simple, they would probably be able to
they're like,
solve it.
I've worked on this for about 2 weeks. I cannot figure out an answer. And I'm like, it's probably your data modeling. It's you just gotta fix the model. I think the model's not. You should probably add another table or two and add some more summaries because your data model doesn't
Yeah.
work.
Yeah, that is the best. Yeah. Hey, good job. By the way, woof,
Yeah,
I had
boom.
1,000 row. Yeah.
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 Come
Look at this
come with me and
1,000 row
let's
like
jump off this
50
cliff together for
tables.
3 hours together as we dive
Yeah.
into this problem. Yeah, I totally agree.
Sure.
But-
So I want to take a slightly different angle.
Okay.
Because at least for the three of us, if you took a micro set, you said no, you don't have to join the community. Well, it's interesting too because there's almost two facets for me when it comes to can you be a pro, can you be successful, what's going to propel your career. And I think that three. Let's say three then. But there's these kind of 3 ways of looking at it. Can you be a pro, like do Power BI, work, get paid, make a living
Yeah.
without joining a user group? Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. No, yeah, absolutely. Can you be successful? I think the same, but can you propel your career? Now, this is the one that I'm a little, I don't know yet, because look at the 3 of us, right? All of us at some point said, we were part of the user group and said, well, no, we want to be more engaged with it.
Yep.
We started leading, and maybe that's another conversation for another day, or that's, I think, part of today too, is we want to speak, not because, we want our voices heard.
That's assuming you
but
don't yell
it's
too much
because
at
what we
a
wanna
game
teach.
and you can actually be
Yeah.
heard.
Right. Yeah. I mean, the thing is, if the Yankees are playing, it doesn't matter. I'm like, so
Yeah, you're gonna be hoarse no matter what.
But thanks, Mike. Yeah, bringing it up again. I don't know. I'm already self-aware, but well, like to be honest, the reason I started speaking was I went to this conference thing, and I thought a lot of the speakers were poor. It was boring, and I was like, why would I sit in on this? I wish someone could do this who would be more entertaining. And I'm like, and I'm realizing, I knew a lot of this I was like, so.
Yeah.
That's really why I got into speaking. He's like, why should I sit through this? This guy is like, I want to fall asleep. Anyways,
it's funny that you mentioned that, Tommy, because I have almost the exact same experience of why I started speaking as well. So one of the reasons why I started speaking was I went to a conference, I listened to some speaking, and I was like, this is interesting, but everything was like slide decks and talking conceptual and just high level things. And I was like, I want to see the tool go. Like, show me the new things. Like, click on the stuff. And I know that demos is very hard to do. And I worked really hard at just doing demos and just being very comfortable in the program and kind of refine some of my style on how I do demos. So I do a lot of, I did a whole series on Charticulator. All of those were done live. I basically just sat down on the computer. I talked my way through how to do the demo. And that's kind of my style. I like seeing people click on buttons. I like seeing things happen on screen. And I felt like there are techniques that you can put on a PowerPoint slide, but you should also be able to demonstrate them in a very clean and easy way. And so I remember my first
Yeah.
major conference, it was one of the Microsoft Business Application Summits, MBAS conferences, and I did the top 10 tips and tricks from Power BI Tips. 10 tips and tricks
No,
in
I remember that.
in an
I
hour
remember
Yeah.
that.
is a lot to do, and I was
It's
burning
phenomenal,
through,
though.
but I did it. I got them all done within a full hour, and it was really, I mean, I think people really liked it. The room was very filled out. It was kind of really cool.
Yeah.
So just a lot of, cool tips and tricks across, what you could do in desktop, how you could change things that I
Yeah.
was learning. It just kind of shared my repertoire of all the things that I was doing. So I felt
Yeah.
like that content was engaging, and that's kind of really what Power BI Tips, the website, was built on. It's built on
Well,
around
and
these little tricks and tips.
yeah, so going back, like going back to like all of us, like we started becoming, more really engaged in the community. And I would argue that outside of like there's a very strong relationship between the skills that we've learned in BI and our career. And in terms of or our skills in Power BI and being part of a community.
Yeah.
I think there's a very tight interrelationship. And it's
So,
easy,
well,
you can join a community. Yeah.
there is,
Dad.
right? But let's dial this into, like, do you have to
Yeah.
join a user group, right? And why? And I think you bring up some really good points. Which is, advancing your career. Like, how does a user group do that? Well, by joining a user group, you're increasing the number of opportunities you have to engage with people, which opens more doors for you. As you pointed out, why is this
Mhm.
podcast happening? Because Mike and I met at a user group and we met you at a conference. Like, these are activities that we did to engage with the wider
Yeah.
community and the local community that
Agreed.
opened a bunch of doors.
Yes.
So
Yep.
there's a caveat on my yes, you should join a user group, which is
Yes. Okay.
use it as an opportunity. If you just show up and leave, you're not engaging or using
Yeah.
that opportunity above and beyond just using it as a singular once a month learning experience
I like that.
where you're learning something new.
Yep.
A user group is specifically about networking and being part of a community. So, like, that is why people recommend it. That is why I recommend joining user group. It's the people interaction
Yeah.
that will help you
Yeah.
advance your career because you're meeting more people. You never know who you're going to meet that like talks to you and goes, "Holy cow, this guy or girl could like solve my problem over here because I have this thing." I like, "Hey, do you want a job?" Like, dude, it happens all the time. And that's just
Yes.
because if you interact and if you're, slightly vocal, these things happen. The other thing is, to your point, is it is a perfect opportunity to use speaking as practice.
Yeah.
Like, our user group, we've asked, many people don't want to do it, right? So that's why it's like the third point here. But it's like anybody who's like, hey, I've been thinking about speaking, like, dude, we'll give you 15 minutes. You want 10, 15, 30? Like, we'll have you speak. It's not
Yeah.
for, like, we bring a lot of MVPs. We speak ourselves. Like, most user groups, I would love it if our user group all the time was people who have no experience speaking and just giving it a whirl,
Um,
right? Because this is where it's a platform where we would love to be growing more speakers. We would love to be growing people who want to share what they know with the community. And
Mm-hmm.
to Mike's point, right? All you would need to do is create a demo of like, hey, this is a unique way I did something.
Yep.
Just because you found it online doesn't mean you can't speak to it.
Yeah.
Like, the thing we've learned, I think, constantly is it's not just because somebody puts something out on the internet and you see that it's there doesn't mean that the world knows it. Right?
That's
Like,
true. Yep.
you could say the same thing. You could have the
like a
same talk.
podcast.
Right. You could have the same talk and give it every single day online in a different video, and you still wouldn't reach the total audience that would constantly get that same thing. So it,
That's a very good point, because we even as we've done Power BI Tips and like teaching and training things, right? We assume that we talk on a topic, and there comes this
everybody
point.
knows now.
Yeah, everyone knows it, or I don't want to talk on it again because
Mhm.
I've already addressed that topic. And so like one of the things that we've done and thought through is like we actually kind of need to do more of the basics, right? So go back to the basics of Power BI because we forget that every day I mean, it's been growing really fast. It's been at a very, you look at the curve of what Microsoft says, here's the number of, monthly active users. It's growing like at an exponential rate at this point. So it's really gaining some steam here. But every time you have another month come by, there's another large swath of new users that have never seen the
Mhm.
basic things, and so now they're walking into this community where there's all this really rich content. Well, sometimes it makes sense to come back and say, let's just cover the basics. Let's go through the beginning again, and let's talk to those points, and then those new people can re-engage with that content.
Right.
And I'll argue too when like if you just join a user group into Seth's point and attended, listened, and left, you're wasting your time. I completely like you may learn a
Not
few
100%
things.
waste. Not 100% waste. Like
I, I
you'll
think
probably get something out of it. You'll like, oh, that was an interesting trick, or maybe
something.
I'll write some notes down and I'll take them with me. Like you'll get a little bit out of it there. But to your
So
point, Tommy, I think where you're going, it's more than just that.
yes, in terms of what we're talking about today, to advance your career and I think to really see a difference, I think if you just listen, you'll learn a few things,
Yeah.
but there's a transformation that happens when you get involved.
Well, I think.
And
Oh, go ahead. Sorry.
well, let me say this. So you could, if you don't like your user group or your user group is either non-existent or boring, do something about it. I think for all of us too, and I know especially for me, when I started getting involved in my user group, it was at a time when I never really shared, like, I just did Power BI and learning everything. And when I started meeting with people and then I started speaking, people ask me questions and they're like, well, how do you do this? I'll answer immediately. And I was surprised I knew the answer. I'm like, wow, I think I know a lot more about this than I thought. And I think that's what happens to all of us once you start becoming engaged and not necessarily teaching others, but having those dialogue when someone goes, hey, I've been trying to figure out this, and you'll find out that you have more knowledge than you think.
Yeah.
And I think that's when this transformation happens.
So there's also people here that are doing different things than you are. I mean, when I think about Power
That's
BI,
yep.
there's a huge surface area now. There's premium, there's embedding, there
Mhm.
is building
Yeah.
reports, there's data
Yeah.
modeling, there's administration in PowerBI.com, the service. And so if you think about your career, like you don't start day one and know all these things about all the stuff. But there's a lot of subject matter areas. And I think a lot of what's very
Yep.
interesting is only after spending copious amounts of time digging into certain areas, I know I'm stronger for sure in the embedded space than most people. Like that is an area that I've been heavily developing in. That's my strength. And I'm pretty good at modeling, but I'm not the best modeler out there. I don't spend all my time
Yeah.
doing data modeling. I would also argue there's other areas that I'm really good at, but there's other areas that I just don't spend as much. I don't need to do as much
Right.
administration. I'm doing some basic things in there, but I'm not really in the weeds. I'm not running a bunch of PowerShell scripts to get a bunch of information out. So I think the advantage of going to this, I liken the analogy of you're playing with a band, right? So I'm a musician. I like to play drums, and so as you get better as the drummer, in my case, as you get better, you want to play with other musicians that are very much better than you, right? Because it pushes you to become that better person. You're playing music with them. They're doing things that you can't quite grasp, and I like staying in that flow state where it's just challenging enough that it is interesting, but it's not so challenging that I can't do it. It's a hard, but it's not like impossible. And
Yeah.
so I feel like that same analogy works very well with like the user groups. Get involved with a user group, find some people that you jive with or you like being around. And I'm hoping that as the pandemic kind of, you know, bumps around here a bit and kind of potentially gets a little bit more under control, we'll start seeing more user group things kind of start showing up. We'll start seeing
Yep.
people getting together again. And I think that's a really fun part. Go together. We would do ours. We would go to a location, go to the Microsoft office. We'd have some pizza. We'd have a little 1 hour presentation. Then we just kind of would open the floor up for just open discussion. And I think people really liked that extra effort that was taken there to kind of just get together and learn Power BI together as a group.
I love that analogy, the band thing too, right? You collectively like bring in our user group, right? Anybody have any questions? Anybody struggling with something?
Yep.
We did that a lot more in the in person because it was
Yeah.
easier to
Mhm.
kind of
And we called
manage
Stump the Chump
Or
too.
more
Like
intimate.
and
Stump the
yeah.
MVP. Like
Now
you've got two
the
MVPs up here. Like give us some hard questions and help us. Like we'll either make up an answer or we'll give you the right one.
yeah, but the experiential knowledge that people have in their particular industries, right? Or
Yeah.
the really hard problem that they solved in a unique way, are things that come out in those conversations as
Totally would
well.
agree.
So I love that analogy of like, yeah, surround yourself with people that are better.
Yeah, I would agree
Yeah.
with that a lot.
The other,
It's funny you say. I
go
think
ahead,
it. Oh,
Tommy.
sorry, you broke up. So
I
continue.
said, go ahead. You're on delay here.
Okay. Well, so to your point about if you are asking someone a question and they don't know the answer, if they say it could be the data model, that means they have no idea what the answer is.
You broke up there a little bit, Tommy. Can you ask it again?
Okay, this is going to be the let's edit this part out. I'll edit this part out. Please, Seth, I thought you stopped talking. Yeah, this is the podcast edit out. Seth, you stopped
All right.
talking, so that's why I started, but you were still talking. So yeah, start over and then sorry.
We're just gonna roll over you completely then, Tommy. So the last point
That's
I'd make around user groups and interaction, right, is a lot of technology focused folks um, say, well, I'm an introvert. I don't like talking to people, or you're not engaged in community. You're not engaged with a lot of people like consultants are. I get it, but here's something that might be shocking to you. I would argue, and there are many, but I would say the majority of top people that are speaking at conferences and engaging with people all day long are huge introverts. Like the only difference between an introvert and an extrovert is, where do you recharge? I think Mike's an extrovert. He recharges with people,
Oh, goodness
right? And
gracious.
that's where it's just like
yes,
he
that's
basks
yeah.
in the glow of communication and talking to people all day long. I'm a guy who, at the end of a day at conference, like, you know, does the whole thing, goes out afterwards, engages with people, and goes back to the hotel room exhausted because
Exhausted.
I recharge by myself.
Yeah, read a book
And
or some alone time thinking through things.
Yeah.
right,
That's how you
right.
kind of get back. Yeah,
So like you're in the company of people who technically, maybe we're socially awkward or whatever the case may be. The point is just get around people, and then that becomes part of just the normal interaction of networking and communicating, and you're in the right space, right? Like,
yeah,
you have a
yeah,
common language in Power BI. We can talk about it at nauseum and geek out on it, and that's the fun of a user group.
yeah,
Is, this is the best place for for people who like comparing Mike and myself. Mike could carry a conversation with anybody. I can't. Like, we nail in a topic, I can go deep and long, right? But it's like, to get to the point where you and I are engaging and clicking, like, I'm just not the guy, right? Power BI is that thing. Like,
yeah.
it lets you find the common ground, engage in conversation, and solve problems and network. So that's the value behind
yeah.
hitting these user groups as well.
And I'd add another pointer
Well,
to this. I'd add another point to
so-
this one is, if you are that person who's already engaging in a user group, I think you also like, so this is not a conversation for people who have not been engaged with user groups at this point. I think this is also a conversation for people who are in user groups today, and I would encourage the people who are already engaged and finding value from it, be vocal about the value you're finding, and then
Yeah.
continually try to invite one or two
Mhm.
colleagues. You don't have to do a lot, but invite one or two other individuals with you to go to the event. And I think one of the things that I think we found very relevant in our group, if we wanted to grow the team, or we wanted to grow who was showing up at the user group, because I think more people inevitably make better conversation. Like, there's diverse ways of thinking, there's diverse layers of experience, and so the more people you can kind of get together to kind of have those conversations, the better the interaction will be across the user group. So, as if you are the avid user group member, we have some individuals in our user group. Dan would be one of them. Like, he's invited his coworkers there, and like, it's been very fun to watch him kind of like, he's been talking with us. We've been talking about data and data culture. He's been taking things and advice from like the people in the user group, and he's been implementing it. I think he went out to go do Melissa Coates' training, her program. Really liked it. Said that's really good. Started getting more people from his organization to do it. He's now moved positions in the company where he has more authority to kind of help people lead the Power BI space, and he's kind of now becoming like a leader in this area. And He's actively engaged in the user group. He's inviting people to show up. He's getting more people excited about Power BI just by him reaching out and being like that personal relationship to somebody else. And I think that's a really good way of growing it even within your company, right? If you're the guy who's like, I'm the solo Power BI guy, try and get involved with the user group. If you're finding value from it, maybe somebody else will. Invite someone to go along to these groups or attend these sessions with you together. And I think you'll find that if you're finding value, they'll probably find value from it as well.
Seth, one, I love that too, because I think I've seen that too at our user group where people started bringing colleagues, and all of a sudden those people were the attendants. One guy didn't show up anymore, and you saw that community. But Seth, I really want to harp on what you talked about in terms of, for a lot of people who are in this space, they say they're introverts because like a lot of people think, they think IT, or they think we're developers, and most times developers can be in their own room with all the lights off and shut code or do their thing.
Mm-hmm.
But the thing is, with what we do, the more you're going to be, or the more successful you're going to be, eventually you're going to have to talk about it with a client, a department, a team. You're going to have to communicate what the data is saying.
That's a good point.
There's no report out there. There's not one report that exists that does not need some actual vocal communication.
I'd agree with that. I
You
think
know, at the end of the
I'm not
day.
suggesting. I'm not suggesting in any way
Yeah,
that
no,
a Power BI
no.
developer doesn't do that in.
No, yeah, no, absolutely. What I'm saying is, like, every report point, you look confused, and maybe I'm not saying this right, but every report at some point needs some vocal communication.
Yep. And
So
I'd agree
for
with
a
you, Tommy,
Power
there.
BI Pro to talk.
I think you have a really good pattern that you use at your company where you are producing reports and you're doing like a little, a planned process that you
Right.
do today to get these reports into the hands of the users. Is I go through as the report author, I record a video around here's that content,
Right.
here's the report, here's how to click the things, here's how I designed it, and then that way anyone who's using the report can be required to go through and watch the
Right.
training video on it. Because again, it's people. I think people a lot of times build a report and then just throw it out there and be like, okay, you should know how to use it because you know all the features, and not everyone is comfortable with personal bookmarks, or not everyone's comfortable with drill through and understanding how those work, and they may not be very discoverable either. So like in order to build an intuitive report, I think there's always a little layer of education that goes along with it. I think it's a great best practice is to keep recording videos about these reports and showing people how it works.
Well, it's not even just that too. Like when it comes to, if you're, let's say shy, or like, I can be an extrovert with certain people, but around new people, I'm, I can shut off.
No, Tommy's not shy.
Depends on who. I'm a selective extrovert. We'll call it that. But the point being, when I started joining the user group, I had to actually talk about the data more, and I actually had to, communicate it, and then I learned how other people talked about it and how they did training, and that helped me at my company to be able to communicate better about the data, to communicate better when people had questions for me.
Sure.
And that's the point I'm saying is, you start learning that when you become more engaged, because now you're actually talking to it. And you're talking and it's a better form to do it because you're talking with people who also understand it.
Yeah.
So you can, in a sense, try things out. If you try speaking for 10 minutes, now your active role. So to me, I think eventually at a company, if you're building reports, you're going to have to talk to someone about the report. And I think being able, you don't have to be a speaker at a conference or a speaker at a user group.
Yep.
But there is, I think I really believe that in our role, you have to have some ability to communicate effectively.
Yeah.
Right.
And so
I agree with that. I agree with that. My point in introvert versus extrovert was certainly not suggesting that people who are in business intelligence don't already talk to the business to gain requirements. And I'm not, and you're not saying that as well, right? But
no,
the individual who is going to go to a social event where they don't know anybody is kind of, to me, different than what they're going to be interacting with or how they interact with at people at work, as well as the people in the group where we're suggesting that
Yeah.
networking is the number one thing you get out of user groups. Extroverts will have no problem with that.
Mm-hmm.
Introverts technically will.
Yeah.
So I was
And
just encouraging
yeah.
people to say, hey,
Well, I was
there
saying
a lot of people are
yes.
introverts. Like it doesn't mean we can't talk to people.
Yeah.
Right.
Yes.
So I agree with you that in fact
No.
in a
Yeah.
business, you know,
Yeah.
communication, how people, you know, interact with one another, that like I think people more often than not, people would be surprised that some of the most active and engaged individuals in communities or at work
Yep.
are technically introverts, that they feel comfortable by themselves or
No.
recharge as opposed to being a social butterfly. That's all.
Right.
I'm a
No.
social butterfly.
Yeah. No. And I think I was a branch of that because this was my experience when I first started in Power BI. I'm not gonna do it, but I'll admit, yeah. My experience in Power BI was like, it's like, you grew up with great reports. When you and I talk, like, you're doing a lot of good things, but no one, like, everyone is confused. Usually when you talk,
Yeah.
like when they ask questions, because I would be so technical, like with everybody. We're from this, from the VP down to the operations, and I would, because that's the way I was thinking about it.
Yep. Yep.
But for me, when I started doing the user group, like you couldn't do that anymore. You got to talk on a high level. Or when I started talking to the people about their problem, or like during networking, like that was transformative for me, to be able to learn how to talk in a different way to different people,
Yeah.
and
It
I think that,
it's kind of an
yeah,
art. It's a little bit of an art form of itself. You
yeah,
got to figure out what resonates. You got to be able to read people and see if they're engaging with
yeah,
what you're talking about, and you can kind of start seeing people's eyes glaze over, and you can see the interaction kind of just
yes.
drop a little bit.
You see that quickly, yes.
But it's a learned skill. I mean, like everything else, I think this is, again, another opportunity here for what we're talking about. You don't have to be part of a user group, but a user group, even having those one-on-one conversations with another member of the user group and explaining what you did and how you did it, it starts giving you a little bit of practice. And I think these things just don't naturally come to people. Another good area, if you're interested in kind of engaging more, is I've heard really good things around Toastmasters. It's another like kind of group of people that
Yeah,
are. It's just focus on
Yeah.
improving your speaking
Speaking.
and engagement skills with other people. So there's people that are doing this already, and that might be another group that if you're interested in speaking or you're nervous about it or whatever, that's another great group you can kind of participate in and start learning how to communicate more effectively with whatever you're doing. And at the end of the day, regardless, whatever you're doing, I think like a Toastmasters or being involved in a Power BI user group and engaging, trying to speaking, all these things are taking you where you're at and adding some more um, skills to your repertoire, and that'll just make you that much of a better person for your career or whatever else you're going to want to do. And with that, I think we're right around 33 minutes, so I think we're going to kind of cut it. Thank you all for listening and watching the Explicit Measures Podcast this Thursday. You can find us on all the social media platforms. We are on Spotify, the Apple Podcasts, and Anchor FM. The links are in the description below. And if you like this podcast and you found this is fun, we would love you just to share it with just one other person. If you watch it live on YouTube, make sure you subscribe and hit the bell for notifications. We'll be doing this live every Tuesday and Thursday at 7:30 a.m. And we'll see you guys on Tuesday next week.